The YNW Melly murder trial is getting extremely chaotic. One of the victims, YNW Juvie, his father got interviewed and told the world about a fight that occurred 2 days before the murders where apparently Sack Chaser beat up Melly and punched his grills out in front of Melly's girlfriend 2 days before they got murdered.
The story about the $200,000 with Anthony was a true story because it's not reported, but Chris told me the same story, and also with a $500,000 play, and Melly was going to get $200,000, Sack was going to get $200,000, Chris was going to get $100,000, and as I'm hearing it from Chris, they was going to sell the YNW brand. Not a record deal or nothing like that.
So that's another motive that the dad brings up, is that $500,000 was on the line and apparently Melly killed them over $500,000, which I've always questioned. I feel like Melly was on the path to be a millionaire, like a multi-millionaire, and it was obvious at this point in time. Why would he kill his friends over that much money? For someone that's gonna be worth that much money, I don't think he's gonna kill his friends over $500,000.
Altercations about disputes about money over certain situations. And they got in a fight prior to that, and they said, you know, the story that they say Sack beat him up and knocked his goals out in front of his girlfriend, and like 2 days later, I think that's when the incident happened.
That's a bombshell statement. He's saying if they got in a fist fight, his girl got knocked out in front of his girlfriend, and then 2 days later the murders happened. Like, that's a bold statement. These could be big motives, but it's gonna be way too hard to prove them in court. There's no evidence of them whatsoever. And then today in court, some drama happened where I'm gonna be reading some tweets from a correspondent that was there live. This guy Bryson Boom Paul on Twitter has some interesting tweets I'll read through later on, but right now we're gonna watch some of the trial from today. So this guy is a manager of a neighborhood, I believe, that they lived in, I'm guessing. So I believe they're just showing the footage of the red Jeep entering the neighborhood so that Melly's team can't say that he got in the red Jeep, because this Jeep was on camera going into the neighborhood alone at a different time where Melly's phone was in the middle of nowhere where he was being tracked. So this is at 3:50 in the morning. The other set of guys are just going home, and the other car that Melly and everyone else was in was like, this is right around the time where Melly allegedly was killing them at 3:50 in the morning, because he stages the drive-by at 4:02 in the morning, 10 minutes later.
So you don't know if there were 4 or 5 people in that car, correct?
Of course, he has no idea how many people were in that car, really. They only checked the driver. This guy works for the Broward County Sheriff's Office. He's basically a nerd when it comes to guns, to dumb it down.
And so we want to make sure that when we're doing it with the firearm that was, because if not, then we're applying so many variables that we can't account for.
So he just explained the importance of actually having the firearm that was used at the scene, which they don't have for this case. They only know it's a .40 caliber weapon.
So the rifling is from the barrel, so it's from this portion here. The chamber of this firearm ends right around here. And so from that portion forward is where the rifling will be present on the barrel of the firearm.
So yeah, he's basically explaining that projectile bullets get an imprint from a gun that is specific to that gun. Like, no other gun can replicate the imprint. That's why it's so important to find the murder weapon, which they did not find.
So these are the areas that typically are cut away by another tool inside of the barrel. Usually when we're looking at projectiles, examiners look at the land impressed areas, not as much the groove impressed areas.
Bro's just reading something. He's probably not even really paying attention. A lot of nerdy gun shit, dude. He doesn't look like he's in a good mood, obviously. At some point during this day, something happens where one of the victim's family members makes eye contact with him and like hit their chest or something at him, and then like have to leave, and then like deputies follow them out and say they need deputies out there. Like, some shit happened. Because if you didn't know, Sack Chaser is also suing YNW Melly's like company, like YNW. Like, his family is suing. So there's tension with, you know, all that as well. Like, there's a civil lawsuit, I believe, for like millions of dollars as well.
Primer residues and particulate lead will travel.
The primer residue, the particulate lead.
Bro looks so bored.
Unburnt and burnt gunpowder.
So in this particular case, it's a 40 Smith & Wesson Blazer. I would use 40 Smith & Wesson Blazer. So I'm not going to use a federal cartridge case. I'm not going to use a warranty cartridge case.
He is so over this shit. I wish they weren't hiding their mouths so I could try to lip read. I'm pretty sure he's drawing something, by the way. He's like scribbling down shit.
Objects or the rifling on the barrel.
So far it's been about 2 hours of this guy analyzing the bullets and the imprints on the bullets and the science behind the bullets and the cartridges and the powder in the bullet. A lot of boring shit.
So once I did the worksheets and I saw that none of the evidence really could have been precluded from.
And this is a murder trial. You know, two men have been murdered. They expect there to be a lot of information given to them in order for them to help make their decision. And sometimes if you get in there and you put it up right out in front of them real quick, they're less attentive at that point. I mean, they want more. They say, wait, is that all I got to make my decision? But not being so brief that they miss the point and they're disappointed.
But how can he reproduce something if he doesn't have the weapon that shot the cartridges, Judge?
Well, certainly if we were looking for a conviction solely on this witness's testimony, I don't know that the state would be able to produce that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, it's really hard for them to reconstruct this and do this science experiment that this guy said he did without it being the exact weapon.
Which type of Glock? Is it a Glock 17? Is it a Glock 19? Is it a Glock 43? Is it a Glock 45? So all of those different models fire the same caliber. caliber. That pattern, because I can't account for those variables. I don't know what the make and model is of the firearm.
Pretty much just explained that his reconstruction was kind of useless because he doesn't have the firearm. Because 40 caliber can be in multiple types of guns.
I mean, essentially, this witness gave all this technical information and then said, you know what, the FBI requires, in order to give an opinion on this, that you have to have the weapon and you have to have even the type of ammunition that was used. So basically, he's saying, you know, everything I told you, really, the FBI doesn't even account for that because we're not following their guidelines.
Honestly, kind of a W for Melly right here. His defense lawyers are going to have a goddamn field day with this guy.
And all we've really seen at this point is forensic evidence, pictures, talk of cell phone data, a gun that no one knows what the gun is, you know, who shot the gun. At this point, it's all a big mystery, and we're just waiting for some actual evidence because we're talking about a man's life here, right? The death penalty is on the line right now. So when you're talking about a person's life, you want to be sure and you want to have all the evidence that you need in order to make that choice.
So Melly's lawyer's cross-examining right now.
The shooting occurred inside a car, for instance. Would the arm length matter of the so-called shooter or shooters?
It could.
And whether or not the person was leaning in one direction?
Sure. We're in a very small environment.
Okay, so, and if you don't take those variables into consideration, you're just giving a estimate of where everybody was, correct?
Lawyer 101, he's making them look like they're guessing because there's so many variables that go into this.
Consider that to be not proof beyond
Objection.
Prosecutor said objection hearsay.
to take all those variables in before you told this jury or any jury.
Yes, scientifically, I would want to make sure that I'm accounting for as many variables as possible whenever rendering an opinion.
Otherwise, it would be just a guess, an estimate, right?
So the next guy's worked with glass for 14 years. Yeah, so we're about to hear about some of the glass from the car, I would imagine, right here.
Almost exclusively anything having to do with glass in the laboratory.
Now they're about to show a bunch of samples of the glass from each window, I believe.
This one is item 7, and this was represented as being from the rear passenger window. Rear window of the vehicle, and again, you can see it's dark gray in color. So modern vehicle manufacturers make the rear passenger windows and the rear window dark gray, which is a natural tinting, that so you don't have to put an aftermarket tint on it. It just tints the passenger part of the vehicle. While it is possible that another source deposited glass at the scene, and it was exactly like the glass in this case, I find it somewhat unlikely just based on those factors.
So he just said he finds it unlikely that it's some other car's glass, so he's not even 100% sure with his science as well. So there's a moment right here where it looks like if Melly gets like visibly upset with staring at someone right here, his lawyer like covers up his face with a binder and talks to him. See his hand? I mean, he's like saying something. I really wish we could fucking know, man. I think someone was staring at him in the courtroom because look, he's like looking over there. He's still staring over in that direction. She seems annoyed too as well. Now he's bobbing his head. He went straight to the music to distract himself.
Crime scene investigator for the first 6 years.
This guy's got a strange accent, okay. He's a crime scene investigator. So this is the hospital where the car was dropped off with the bodies.
Take a marked police vehicle. So that's the exterior.
Apparently this guy cuts off the prosecutor a lot too, which you can't do in courts.
Should be.
He does it on accident, obviously, but...
Moving on to the next photograph.
The next photograph is the vehicle again. It's
his accent's strong, dude. It's gonna be really hard to analyze what he's saying.
Do you go to hit and runs on the side of the road as a crime scene investigator?
I did.
I forgot that the hood of the car was damaged, like they hit something.
Did you have any idea as to when that damage could have occurred?
No idea how the damage occurred.
Oh, is this the gunpowder residue test? So look, a positive looks like that, and that's pretty much what this looks like on Bortland's hands, the driver that showed up with the bodies.
Blue specks, which will react. It's a chemical reaction to the nitrogen.
Is that a positive identification?
I couldn't see any real blue to me. I couldn't see it in the test.
He just said he couldn't see any blue, so I guess he's saying it wasn't positive? It looks pretty positive to me if you're looking at the pictures. Negative is like completely blank. But now Melly's team's gonna come up and cross-examine this guy. This might be interesting here.
You've got to remember that you've got the rear windshield completely shattered. So there's no holes in the glass, right? But it's going into the rear seat.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out where the two holes are. One would be the back of the seat and the other would be the front of the seat. Oh, and you affix the string on which side of the hole? So there you would push the rod through the hole. It will come out on the other side, the front side of the seat. Is dictated by the angle of the rod that has gone through that hole to the hole in front.
You're saying that the angle from the rod is dictated by the
angle of the string is dictated by the angle of the rod that you had already placed through that hole.
Okay.
Right? I'm not the expert. You tell me. Is that what happened?
No, that's correct.
Well, is that what you did?
I don't remember now, but I
Wouldn't you have?
Oh, he's lost. He's confusing him.
I'm sorry.
Bullets. Don't know which go completely straight. Bullets. Twist, turn, up and down. So
He said bullets go up and down and they ricochet and shit. It's gonna be hard to do subtitles for this guy. I'm sorry in advance. Like, I literally can't. I don't know what the fuck he's saying like 80% of the time.
So you're up against a difficult task. Let's concede that, right? And in performing that task, how, if you didn't dictate the angle that you extended that string backward by the rod that was placed inside, how would you know what angle to extend backward?
I don't know exactly.
How do you know anything?
Yes, what? An approximate angle, the height.
And if I were Gary Coleman, remember different strokes? Short guy. If I was a short guy, and I was firing from here,
He's comparing Shaq and Gary Coleman.
it would create the same angle as it would if I were Shaquille O'Neal back here.
Well, no, that's a very interesting thing. Especially from instrumental time. But you have to remember, people shoot. If it's normal, people expect people to shoot eye level, right? But who knows when you're going to shoot again? You can shoot down here. You can shoot like this. So it's never, your theory.
They could be firing at one angle, could be firing at another angle, and any variety of angles. So in order to determine the approximate height, which was what you were attempting to do, I mean, it's approximate.
Okay, I can tell, but you know.
So with all those three variables, which one did you know?
I did not know.
You didn't know any.
I know.
So would you agree with me that when you have three variables that, at a minimum, they're probably more than we have to consider, three variables that affect your analysis, you would agree with me that your exercise was essentially a futile one?
Well, you have a good point. Could you be inaccurate?
That would even create more possible inaccuracies, right?
I don't understand.
They're kind of just guessing, and it's kind of a guessing game, like trying to make it look not reliable.
If you know the variable, it certainly will help you, yes.
And if you don't know the variables, then you cannot perform an accurate test.
It's difficult to perform an accurate result if you do not know all the variables. Correct.
Okay.
He's fishing for him to say it's going to be inaccurate testing if you don't know all the variables, and he keeps saying anything's possible.
And you know that a lab test showed positive.
Ooh, wait, so that's what happened. He thought it was negative, but the lab test said positive. All right, so this is the moment where Melly sees someone in the courtroom that I believe is a family member of one of the victims, and he comes in and he pounds his chest because someone that was in the room tweeted about this. I'll show you the tweet here too. See, he seems really animated about something, like some shit's going on. I think I read his lips saying he said, what did he say? I think he said, I don't know. I don't know. What's he doing with this pen, bro? Trying to give someone their pen back? So this guy's tweets are interesting. He says Melly recites a prayer that lasts until the jury enters the room, or is it a chant? YNW Juvie's mother sits in the front row of the gallery with her eyes glued to Melly across the courtroom. She has been attempting to force him to look her in the eyes frequently. Melly rolls his eyes and turns his head to the witness upon the sight of Juvie's grandmother and other siblings entering the courtroom. Melly's mother, Jamie, said yesterday was a lot better. Yesterday was good. Female legal counsel visibly have a very comfortable connection. She's very hands-on with Melly. It's visibly undeniable. Melly shakes his head in annoyance at the sight of the victim's gallery, as it is filled with a lot of the younger family members of Juvie and Sack Chaser. Children in the victim's gallery notice him yawning and begin to troll him with sleepy hand gestures. I wish all this was on camera, bro. Jamie King confused by the examination of gunpowder trajectory. It was very confusing. Melly is forcefully trying to stay awake. Melly annoyed that Juvie's mother brought younger family members in the courtroom, 5 females between ages 10 and 12. Melly has turned over a piece of paper and began writing or doodling as his hand moves carefree. Sack Chaser's mother is tearing up and exits the courtroom. Melly and female legal counsel are holding an open conversation filled with smiles and flirtatious banter. Sack Chaser's mom appears stressed and restless but calm right now. Melly appears to can't stand Juvie's grandmother, who just entered the courtroom, disgruntled facial expression as she takes her seat. Sack Chaser's family is currently in the middle of a civil lawsuit outside of Melly's double murder trial, with several members of the YNW LLC who is suing for millions. Oh, this one's crazy right here. Melly's mom is unbothered, unconcerned, and unresponsive to the constant obvious looks at her by Juvie's grandmother from across the courtroom. It's honestly really sad because these families lost their children. Like, it's devastating for sure. Juror number 12 dozed off. One of the jurors fell asleep, quickly popped her head back up, and canvassed the room to see if anyone noticed. Juvie's grandmother has fallen asleep. The witness and laboratory specialist found no difference from the Jeep's glass, and it had to come from the same vehicle. Both Juvie and Sack Chaser's mothers have dozed off. The juror who dozed off is juror number 15, not 12. Michael Kelly, the crime scene supervisor, has the gallery laughing with his accent and constantly cutting off the prosecution. Sack Chaser's mother puts on her sunglasses to cover her tears while looking at the footage of the Jeep. Exterior riddled with bullets. Taking deep sighs. Actually imagine a mother's position in this. Like, it's so devastating, I can't even imagine. Melly briefly looks at the photos of the shot up Jeep, mostly masks his face with his hand and looks down at the table. Now a sheriff exits the courtroom, telling another sheriff, "We need someone outside." The two sheriffs exit the courtroom. Enters the courtroom to gesture another male family member to exit, then looks across the courtroom at Melly and pounds his chest 2 times with his fist and nods his head. Both men exit the courtroom and the sheriff immediately followed to speak with the men exiting. Melly made no gesture towards the exiting individuals. So lots going on the spectator side of the courtroom. A lot of scientific shit today. Very boring. That's why people fell asleep. Even family members and members of the jury fell asleep. Apparently the glass that was found at the scene was a match. A lot of tension in this courtroom, understandably. So I'm worried that there's going to be an outburst at some point, which is probably going to happen. I'll keep covering this. If you're new to my channel, subscribe, follow my Twitter and Instagram. Fucking love you boys. Peace out.